All right, Chief Meteorologist Jason Smith here as we're taking a close look at what's happening in the tropics. I wanted to give you a kind of a detailed deep dive on what we're seeing here with a tropical wave that is located in the central Atlantic. And just to kind of put this in perspective, it is totally normal to have an active tropical wave, or at least the existence of a tropical wave in the Atlantic at the end of July and getting into the 1st of August. This is the time of the year where we start typically seeing an uptick in tropical activity, and there are always going to be waves out there to keep an eye on. But this one has a medium chance of getting going, and it's a high-end medium chance at 60%. So let's take a look at some of the maps I have for you here, and I'll bring this slide over here so you can see it. This is what we're seeing from the National Hurricane Center as far as the odds of development, and they are at 60% with this particular tropical system, potential tropical system. If you look at where the X is right now, though, there's hardly anything around it. It is a large tropical wave, but it's devoid of showers and thunderstorms because we have a lot of dry air out in the Atlantic basin, and we'll take a look at it here just to kind of clean all that up. There's not much going on out in the Atlantic right now. We've got the upper end of the wave starting to show some signs of life with some showers and thunderstorms, but nothing organized at all. It's nowhere close to getting organized based on what we're seeing right now. And we'll just continue to watch this as it moves closer to the Greater Antilles and also the Bahamas, because it does have a better chance of getting going there. If you look at the atmospheric dust, these are plumes of dust coming off the Sahara Desert. And atmospheric dust, the Saharan air, is usually very, very dry, and it also, with the dust in the air, it just inhibits tropical development. It usually suppresses thunderstorm activity. Now, looking at it, the dust plumes are more significant on the right-hand side of the screen. And then as you get over in the middle part of the screen and over to the Gulf of Mexico, you see the dust is really not a factor. This is something that's worked out really well for us. We've seen some dusty air, even in the Gulf, the last couple of weeks, but it's starting to mix out, and these dust plumes are not as significant that are coming out over the Atlantic. And so if we look at the forecast through Sunday, you can see where this wave is heading. If you look at Puerto Rico, Cuba, Miami, there's not much of a factor as far as dust goes that's going to have a limiting impact on this system. It's dry where the system is now, and there's still going to be some dusty plumes out there, but there are also pockets of more moist air. If we look at it on the water vapor loop, that wave is surrounded by brown stuff. So there's brown stuff to the right of it and to the left of it, to the east of it and to the west of it, and a little to the southwest of it. Once it gets over into the Caribbean, there's more moisture. Now, there's an upper level low in the Caribbean too, and that will help with a wind shear situation to keep something from forming if it takes more of a southerly track. If we look at our wind shear map, you can see that big bullseye in the Caribbean between Jamaica and Caracas, Venezuela, which has definitely been in the news headlines here lately. And looking at that, you know, this system is likely going to be very close to an area of very high atmospheric wind shear, so it's not likely going to develop if it takes a more southerly track. If something forms, it'll be on the northerly end. But looking at Friday, the wind shear gets weaker, especially over the path of the possible system. There still will be some modest shear going on along the east coast of the United States, but not as much as if it were to go through the Caribbean where that upper level low is. Water temperatures are definitely supportive of a tropical system. They're way up there. Where the wave is right now, that buoy is reporting 84-degree water temperatures, and the water temperatures are going to be between 84 and 85 degrees all the way along, so it's certainly supportive of a tropical system from a water temperature perspective. But there are other things you have to look at. You got to look at the shear, and you've got to look at the dry air that's surrounding the system. Now, looking at the steering flow here, kind of interesting to see the H's on the map there. Those are high pressure areas, and the primary steering factor with this is going to be the H, which is to the right of Bermuda. So it's going to be not the one over the United States, but the one over the Atlantic. That is the Bermuda High. And, you know, we just see a little break between the two ridges. Look at this valley that's forming up here. And that's why it looks like if something does form around the Bahamas or even close to South Florida, it's likely going to turn to the north. These tropical things like to find a break in the ridge, and they want to go poleward. They want to go northward. So if we do get an organized system, especially a stronger one, it's most likely going to turn northerly once it gets close to the east coast of the United States, Florida, or the extreme eastern Gulf of Mexico, and follow the contour of that Bermuda Ridge, which will be a factor. Now, if that ridge were to build more towards the west, it could be more problematic for the southeastern United States, especially the Gulf Coast. But we don't see that scenario right now. The best route is for this to go up the east coast or over Florida based on what we're seeing. Now, the GFS just doesn't really pick up on it. If we look in there, we can't really find much of anything, and it actually breaks a piece off the wave on Sunday and tries to develop something in the northern Gulf by about Tuesday of next week. We'll have to watch that, but right now the current thinking based on the National Hurricane Center forecast and what we're seeing with the upper level winds is for a system to be more likely to follow what the European model is suggesting. And this brings a system over Puerto Rico and then develops it to the north of Cuba and over the Bahamas, and then develops into a pretty well-defined low-pressure area up off the Carolinas as we head into Tuesday. So two totally different scenarios there. The wave, the southern end of the wave is less likely to develop because of land interaction and also the wind shear, but we'll see if the GFS actually plays out. Right now, the European model appears to be the more plausible scenario. So that's what we're seeing. Just kind of want to talk about the different factors involved in the tropical process. I mean, it's so easy to say, well, the water's really warm in the Gulf, so something's going to happen. Well, not necessarily. If you have really strong upper level winds that are hostile, or you have a lot of dry air, that can limit a system. Also, steering flow is really important with all these tropical systems, and right now it looks like the Bermuda Ridge is far enough to the east and the break in the ridge is far enough to the east that this may not be a direct threat to us. But of course, things can change, and not real fond of that long-range GFS model. These long-range models, especially when you don't have a starting point for a system, can be pretty unreliable. It can show you trends and give you general concepts, but what's interesting too is the GFS has had pretty much the same solution for like 3 or 4 days, and European has had pretty much the same solution for about 3 or 4 days. So we've seen a lot of disagreement, but they've consistently disagreed. We'll see what wins out. We'll continue to watch this. I'll have an update on Fox 10 News at 3, 4, 5, 9, and 10 p.m. tonight. And of course, you can check in with meteorologist Matt Barentine tomorrow morning for an update on the tropics. It's a good time of the year to be checking in with Fox 10 on a regular basis because we're getting into the time of the year where things are going to start happening with regularity in the tropics. Thanks for joining us for Next Weather Today.